Hi guys, it's Lucy. So this week I wanted to wrap up my commentary on Caste, The Origin of Our Discontents by Isabel Wilkerson, and I was really encouraged by one of you Savage Reads who mentioned that you love the book, and I wanted to give it more time and ended up finishing, and I'm really glad I did because the best part of the book, in my opinion, is the epilogue. I think it's best read as a long style essay, like say in a high school sort of setting. And I think that would achieve the sort of awakening I think that Wilkerson is really aiming for with her book, Caste. So I thought she did a much better job in the second half of the book compared to the first half. And I understand why it had to be this way. The second half came up there were more stories embedded, and I think some of these might have related to stories that came up during the research for Warmth of Other Suns, but didn't really quite make it into one of the three main storylines that were covered in that migration epic. But I think there were some very, very interesting bits, and I'm just going to go through some of these that made me think twice or open my worldview just a little bit more, and I appreciate it, which I hope don't come across as spoilers, but perhaps hopefully as more of teasers for you. So the first thing that I wanted to mention was I'll start from backwards in. She's talking about the Civil War reenactments. So, when you visit like a specific town, there are always these forts, and then they'll tell you, we have these enactments which people dress up, and it's like a whole dramatic affair to honor history and just, I guess, for fun as well. And she said in one little paragraph, she said, at these reenactments throughout the country, so US, more people, and these are usually volunteers, typically sign up to fight on the side of Confederates than for the Union. That is very interesting in itself. And along the same lines, she mentions, how US honors this part of history. She says the Confederate president, Jefferson Davis, went on to write his memoirs at a plantation in Mississippi, and that is now the site of his presidential library. As well, Robert E. Lee, the general who fought on the Confederates, became an esteemed college president, and when they died, they were both granted state funerals with military honors and were revered with statues and monuments. And these monuments itself became a huge issue themselves when people protested for their removal. I think this was a couple years ago. I really don't like how news like that comes up and then just dies away. She also mentions in this book that when the town actually tried to solicit contractors to remove the monuments, a lot of these businesses tried to bid for the business, but they were all scared away because they were either shunned by the community, as in, if I'm a owner of a contracting business and I said, okay, I will bid for this business for, I don't know, $4,000, something like that, to get my guys together in a truck and get this monument out. I would be receiving death threats and my neighbors would ignore me, or if I walk into a restaurant with my family, it would just be uncomfortable silence. So it's very interesting. So that she writes a little bit about that in this book, which I think is very realistic, and I don't think anyone really talks about it outside or knows about it outside of those towns or municipalities themselves. But doesn't that show so much about current day attitudes on how US and in addition how Davis and Lee were treated after death compared to, say, somebody like Hitler, where his bunker in Germany has literally been paved over and is now, I think, a parking lot. There's just no signage whatsoever where this is where we found Hitler, this is where he was hiding. Like there's no honor in being a leader that committed such atrocities, and yet plantation owners like Davis and Lee probably and others as well they lived very comfortably. They lived in the upper crust, so did their families, and they honor these people in public in monument style. What does that say to a high school student who is learning history, who is seeing these things in those towns, thinking, oh, so it's okay to have treated people that way and still be honored? It's okay that we should be proud of that, because clearly we're being told that this is honorable. Anyway, the monuments are another can of worms altogether, but that's just it's very good that I think she brought all of this up in a very cohesive way. And talking about Trump election and the bipartisanship, she says maintaining the caste system as it had always been was in their interest. So there, as in the white majority, and some were willing to accept short-term discomfort, forego health insurance, risk contamination of water and air, and even die to protect their long-term interest in the hierarchy as they had known it. This is her way of kind of giving us a new perspective on why working class whites voted the way they did. And in very similar veins, she mentions this idea of white racial solidarity and white worldview. Consciously or not, many white voters are seeking to reassert a racial order in which their group is firmly at the top. And this could be seen by attitudes towards, oh, the foreigners are taking away all of our jobs, like that type of thinking. And she doesn't dwell too much in these arguments, but I think these are very good things to bring up, and they echo kind of the reverse side. So there was a story about a Nigerian man saying, there are no black people in Africa. They identify themselves by their ethnicities, who they are, their cultural background. But then when they come to America, it doesn't matter how well-spoken they are, how high achieving they are grouped as black, and they're treated as black first. And this shows up, from a scientific perspective on the rate of disease for by race, where in Africa, as similarly with the rest of the world, people have been progressively achieving higher standards of living, shown by longer ages of life. But in America, it's the reverse. And anyway, so there's some more discussions about that aspect of being American and caste and the impact of that as well, which I think it is also a very good. So this book is really like all around, not just about caste, but the way that it has entrenched itself so deep into our culture. And I say our, and I guess I suppose I include Canada in there as well, but we don't really notice it, but I think I feel it, and or at least I view things as the way the majority has viewed it in the past. And it's a little bit disturbing how we accept that white is a color. She has a really good definition about halfway in about caste that I think is well worth ending off with. So she says, caste is more than rank. It is a state of mind that holds everyone captive. The dominant imprisoned in an illusion of their own entitlement, the subordinate trapped in the purgatory of someone else's definition of who they are and who they should be. I really liked how she mentions quotes by W.E.B. Du Bois. She quotes extensively from Erich Fromm, and she mentions James Baldwin, Toni Morrison, and some social studies that were done by Davis, Gartner, Dollard's book, Horton's Palmaker's book. And everything is so well noted and footnoted that, I really trust these sources, and that I know that these are solid resources to look to if I wanted to look further. So that's an aspect of, I suppose, her professionalism and background in journalism brings to something like this, where it could be so opinionated that you don't know what you're reading or what you're getting, like say something from a random Facebook post or Twitter. There's a lot of context. She doesn't try to give you conclusions or statements as they appear face value. She provides everything else, and I really feel like I am forming my own view and my own opinion, and I think that's so valuable. And the last thing I'll mention is that I really appreciated her little tidbits on airlines. So she talks about being, African American herself. She talks about her experiences flying business class or first class and the varied treatments. And she doesn't mention the airline on purpose, because it's not about the particular brand. It's about the cultural sentiment reflected in the service that she's received. And I'm so glad that she put those in, and especially inconspicuously, so that if you are a very careful reader, you'll pick those up and you'll form your own view. And her story is just one of many, many voices. So I really enjoyed the second half of the book, and I'm so happy that some of you guys are watching these videos, are commenting. Please keep doing so, and I'll talk to you guys next week about some random other book that I'm reading about, and I hope you guys have a good week. Bye.